But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. This is a very, very special edition of Honey Badger Radio where it's breaking news. It just came out. This is Mel Magazine's report on female men's rights activists, specifically Honey Badger Radio itself. And the title of this particular radio show, Dollar Shave Club Better Than Gillette, Not So Fast. And if you don't understand the reference, Mel Magazine is the brand magazine for Dollar Shave Club. And I'm sure a lot of you remember Gillette pooping the bed with its toxic masculinity ad way back when. That spawned some people doing ads in response that attempted to say that, you know what, all masculinity isn't toxic. There's positive masculinity, and apparently resulted in Gillette losing some money, at least on its men's grooming instruments brand. But now Dollar Shave Club has decided that it's seen Gillette's poop and it wants to do some of the same. Maybe they're completely fair. What do you think, Karen? You think they're going to be fair?
I don't know. Like I sat down with that woman, the journalist, for something like 3 hours over lunch, and I know you sat down with her for quite a while, and I wasn't able to really get a beat on, how she was going to do things. Some of the follow-up emails were a little bit uncharitable, right? The follow-up questions in the emails she sent. But like I think we all have an understanding that the media is going to be super friendly to you and super nice and whatever, right? They're going to be like really great, right? And then they're going to prune whatever they can to spin the way they want out of the things that you've said, because you've been coaxed into this idea that they're friendly to you, right? Like GQ did it. Like everybody, GQ did it, in the context of the 2014 ICMI, right? Everybody's done it. Like there is, you do catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? So a lot of these journalists who, they want to really sit down with you for a long time, right? They take the position, they don't take the Chris Matthews like staccato interview approach, right? They do the, hey, yeah, I totally understand, right? But then, like they take the approach that I took with Chris Cantwell, right? Whereas like, yeah, no, here's where we can agree, here's where we disagree, I'm going to be nice to you, I'm going to let you speak your piece, blah, 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 right? The difference tends to be that I uploaded the full interview uninterrupted with, that I did with Chris Cantwell, right? But these pieces, right, are just, they just chop up everything, and they're like, okay, so we're gonna take this, and this, and this, right? And we're gonna discard all the rest, and then we're gonna spin it our way. And I don't know personally, I don't know whether this piece is like that, right? I have been a subject in pieces that were that way. I don't know, because I haven't looked at it yet. Essentially, this is like, it literally is breaking news. We're going to be learning in real time what this journalist said about it. So
let's just wishes. So you'll get the freshest of hot takes, completely uncensored. Our response to this and this
and completely
this
unprepared.
And completely unprepared. I don't know what's going to happen. Brian might know because he may have read ahead, but me and Karen do not know. So these are our original takes on this piece on us. So do you want to get started? I don't think we need any more preamble.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll read the article and you guys can go ahead and interrupt and react.
Guys, as you're listening to this, and once again, this is Dollar Shave Club's brand magazine. So it's the magazine that goes out with their men's grooming products. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go through this all with us. Listen to what we have to say. Listen to if there were any kind of distortions or misrepresentations. And when we're done, I want you to say in the comments if you are ever going to buy Dollar Shave Club again. And just say yes or no, and respond to that question in the comments. But keep it in mind as we go through whether or not you want to continue to support them with your money. And I'm pretty sure that Dollar Shave Club like a part of a subsidiary of a larger company.
It's actually owned by Unilever, right? And and
Unilever.
when the Gillette ad came out, they posted a tweet saying "Welcome to the club, gentlemen," or something like that, right? So it was like they knew that Gillette was going to bleed consumers, and that they were in a position to pick them up because at the time, I believe they were an independent company, right? They were. It was Dollar Shave Club. That was what they were. They had not been bought out by Unilever at that point. And they were like, yeah, no, here's our position on this. Welcome to the club, gentlemen, because those guys don't like you. And then they were acquired by Unilever. And now here we are.
Maybe I should even make a Twitter poll at the end of all this. I'll retweet out the video link and do a Twitter poll. Will you continue to buy products from Dollar Shave Club now that you know how Mel magazine reports?
And now that you know that it's not Dollar Shave Club anymore. It's not the Dollar Shave Club that you knew and loved when they first came on the scene. It's now a corporate commodity owned by I guess a personal hygiene giant called Unilever that it's like it may as well be owned by Procter and Gamble, which is Gillette is owned by Procter and Gamble, right? It may as well be owned by Procter and Gamble. And so there's been a change in leadership with the acquiring of Dollar Shave Club by Unilever. And that may be informing what is being said in this, and sort of this change of heart between, yeah, Gillette fucked up. Welcome to all our new customers who are, leaving Gillette. That there may be, there a larger corporate entity. All of the freaking senior staff at Dollar Shave Club have been gotten rid of. They've been paid off. They've been given their golden parachutes and told to fuck off, right? And now it's in the hands of a corporate giant, right? So I mean, like I'm not like, if this is bad, I'm not going to criticize the people who started Dollar Shave Club, right? And the philosophy that they had with Dollar Shave Club, those old ads that, a few years ago, right, where I was just like, yeah, that's a funny ad. It's like the ad for the sunglasses, that are made with the space age freaking materials and all of that, and other ads for, very, sort of masculine ads.
Yeah, that soap you shower with, it's shit. That ad.
That's right. And it's like I loved Dollar Shave Club when they were Dollar Shave Club, but now they're just Unilever. They're just a subsidiary of Unilever. So
we'll see how it is. We don't know how bad the article is. I haven't read anything except the headline. So all right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this. So before we do, I'm going to ask you guys, please hit that like button. It helps us out with, sort of increasing visibility. So smash like, Chan, and now we're going to get into it.
Well, and also put it through super chats because it helps us keep this particular channel as well.
Yeah, you can send us super chats. It validates the existence of our channel, and that is much appreciated. Okay. In the Honey Badger Brigade, female men's rights activists fight for their version of equality. The most influential members of the men's rights movement might now be its diehard female contingent. But make no mistake, they're no mere pawns. So that's actually kind of that's pretty charitable, though. If you think about it,
like maybe this is gonna be good. Maybe this is gonna be okay.
I know it's gonna be delicious no matter what. No
All right.
matter what. It may be salty or sweet, but it's gonna be delicious.
Okay, it might be half salt, half sweet. You know, like salted caramel is really delicious. Yeah.
While it would seem that the manosphere is exclusively the domain of miserable white men, there's a surprising number of women among it too. And so, throughout this week, so the whole week, we will present you with 6 features that explore the lives and beliefs of these women. From femcells to honey badgers. Who are they? What have they experienced in life to end up cavorting with men who, to varying degrees, deny their humanity? And why do we know so little about them?
Okay, this is the editor's presentation of what will follow. So this is an editorial on the part of the editorial staff. This is not, I'm going to say, because this is exactly what was presented in an article that was published like 2 weeks ago, right? Almost word for word.
No, it's the intro that they're putting in front of all of them.
Yeah,
I've been reading them as they go, and they put this intro. It's just a generic intro, which was really weird because they actually put it in front of their article on intactivist nurses, and I was like,
Oh my God. Like whatever,
Goodness,
but
really?
but what I'm saying is that wasn't actually written by the author of this article.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was written by her editor.
Can't hold her to blame for that.
Okay,
No,
yeah,
I think
so
it's probably intended to get your attention too. I mean,
Because, like, in large part, I don't think any men's rights activists deny my male men's rights activists and any male fans deny my humanity.
no, of course not.
No.
There's also probably no femcells in the manosphere. But, okay. It's early afternoon on a frigid day in Edmonton, and I'm sitting inside Coliseum Steaks and Pizza, a Browning bastion of Canadian gastronomy, where silent septuagenarians shovel French fries into their mouths in lieu of conversation. A steak restaurant. What?
Okay. Like, I was literally like, Coliseum Steak and Pizza is a bastion in this. It's been around in my neighborhood. It's been around for like 40 years, right? It has been family owned for 40 years, right? And it is kind of like this nostalgic throwback to the 1980s steak and pizza houses in Canada, right? There's a lot of bare wood and brick on the interior of the place, and everything comes with garlic toast. I told her that. And it's like, yeah, no. So she's literally dissing the people in my community. She's like, oh, a bunch of like elderly people who shovel fries into their mouths rather than have conversations. Like, what?
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
She's still setting the stage, but I mean, like,
is it
like a low information voter region?
Yeah. That's what I was just gonna say. It just seems, it sounds like it's basically like, oh yeah, here are the common folk, and look at how disgusting they are, or how lame they are, or whatever.
I think probably some of them like raise cattle or something.
Yeah.
God, how horrible.
Yeah, or they maybe work in the oil and gas industry. Phew.
Yeah.
Like,
ugh.
What disgusting people.
Flyover country. Who cares?
Like,
all right, but
what? Like, oh my God! Like, what a horrible way to open the article.
Okay, all right. Let's go until we get to actual conversation about men's issues. Okay. A steak restaurant isn't where I'd originally planned to meet infamous men's rights activist Karen Strawn, but given that her back door is frozen shut, her drains are mysteriously clogged, and there's a table saw in her dining room taking a breather between renovations, her suggestion that we meet somewhere other than her place sounds just fine. I barely
okay, she's just lying. Okay, my back door was frozen shut. We had a cold snap before her coming out, right? We had a cold snap where it was like literally -40. That was the daytime high for about 10 days. Okay. And my back door froze shut. which meant that I could not take my garbage out, right? Until we had a wonderful day. It was like -10 Celsius, right? And it was like a balmy tropical freaking day where I could get a fucking hair dryer out and a pry bar and pry my back door open and eject 2 weeks worth of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Bagged garbage. But that was all stacked up in my house when she originally reached out to me for an interview, right? There is no table saw on my kitchen table right now, but my house is in, as I told her, a state of perpetual renovation, right? It's in a state of paused renovation, right? I have not, like, what am I supposed to do? Bring my table saw out onto my kitchen table so I can install these quarter round moldings, right? Like, no, there's no table saw on my fucking kitchen table. What the fuck, right?
Yeah, but it's not really that important, though. I mean, she's just indicating that you're undergoing renovations.
She's lying. Oh my gosh, she's lying.
Okay, she's
Yeah, but
lying.
this could be considered window dressing. It's not lying about anything essential. It's just setting a mood.
Yeah, but it is good to point out, because she is setting a mood, and to use small lies to set up a mood means that you might be winding up for a big uppercut later.
A big whopper.
Yeah, a big whopper later. But let us continue. She basically, what we've established is that she's flexible with the truth. So, where was I? Oh, I barely have time to decide what to order before the door opens and a gust of Arctic air blows a small woman in a puffy black jacket inside. I recognize her immediately from the t-shirts, iPhone cases, and fan art she's plastered on as the female face of the men's rights movement. Strawn's now iconic image is everywhere.
Am I on iPhone cases?
I had no idea. I had no idea. There is a link. There is a link here. I'm going to open it in a new window because I don't want to. Oh yeah. Yes, Karen's on an iPhone case. Look at that.
Wait,
20.
Where did that come from, and who is selling that?
Like, seriously, what are you doing? You're selling iPhone cases with Karen on it?
It's kind of awesome. It's kind of awesome.
It's awesome, but at the same time, should she not get some royalties from that? Like,
I'm flattered, but I have sorely neglected my merch potential.
Yeah.
Right. I get emails constantly from Teespring and other places like that, right? Saying we want to develop a line of merchandise for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
What? I've never seen this before.
Yeah, this is Karen Strawn fan art. This is fan art.
Right? It's fan art.
Yeah.
And people are monetizing it. I'm fine with that, right? But like, I'm not making any. I just want to say, I am not making any money off of merchandise. Period. Like, I don't make one dime. I have not monetized my merchandising potential. If you're buying a Karen Strawn t-shirt or iPhone case or fucking, I don't know, heating pad or like socks, right? You're not buying them from me, and I don't benefit from that. That's all other people who have essentially, oh, that's freaking awesome. It's all other people who have essentially done their own art and they sell it, and like, I'm not objecting to that, right? But I don't get anything from that.
I'd object to it.
That's
like, seriously, guys, if you're selling Karen Strawn art, you might want to consider actually giving her something for it. Like, that's a little not kosher, but I mean, I can't stop you from doing it. I just think it's sort of unethical. I know that Karen does. Well, I mean, if Karen's okay with it, Karen's okay with it, but still.
Careful, you're going to piss off the ANCAPs.
Obligatory super chat to validate Honey Badger Radio's basic YouTube rights. This is what corporatism looks like. Hee hee. Hoo. Corporatism has got to go.
All right. Thank you, the Raiden Doors.
Thank you for the text, voice text from ANCAP.
But I just want to make it clear, right? she's essentially posting these links to all of this merch as if I'm capitalizing on it. She hasn't said, "Oh, these are all people who are just her fans who are capitalizing themselves on her image." No, this is her capitalizing on this.
All right.
Okay, let's just keep
Moving
going.
on. With her short cropped hair, makeup free face, and signature wife beater tank, it would be easy to mistake her for a certified second wave feminazi. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Though she's collected, articulate, and motherly in person, she's got 3 kids. Strawn is a vicious and outspoken anti-feminist and polemicist who believes feminism is a sick, harmful ideology that infantilizes women and disadvantages men. She attacks the issue from...
All of that is true.
Okay. She attacks the issue from all angles on her blog, Owning Your Shit, and her ever-popular YouTube channel, Girl Writes What, where her 215,000 subscribers tune in to hear her dissections of everything from the hypocrisy of female objectification. Quote, why is it deemed perfectly okay for women to objectify David Beckham while men who waggle their eyebrows at pretty young women are considered pigs, end quote, to the bullshit of male privilege. She's also a founding member of the Honey Badger Brigade, a website and podcast she started with fellow anti-feminists Alison and Hannah Wallen. Hey, finally you guys got mentioned. That has 10,000 monthly listeners and discusses men's rights, feminism, and pop culture from an anti-woke perspective. And here's a photo of Karen. I guess that was taken that day.
Anti-woke?
Yeah,
anti-woke. It was taken in
anti-woke.
the parking lot after we left the restaurant. And she was just like, "Can I just get a photo?" And I was like, "Fuck, fine."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually you can see my car behind me. It was the first time there wasn't like a thick crust of ice over it in about 2 weeks. So, I was just like, my jacket's open and I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
I guess we sort of baffled them, and you're just like a bunch of Canadians, and how unwoke or uncool or unurban we are.
Well, I mean, look at it. She's like, "Oh, hey, this would be great because it's like a Stark, and there's like an old crappy brick building in the background and a bunch of power lines and and a private property sign and an empty parking lot."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
like, Canada looks like crap in winter. Do people not realize this?
Well,
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of beautiful if you can go out into the countryside, but
the only thing that looks good in winter in Canada is places where human beings don't ever go.
Yeah, unless that are only accessible by like a snowmobile. I mean, it's beautiful on the snowmobile.
Or snowshoe.
Or by snowshoe. Like this, yeah, Canada is not attractive in winter. It just isn't. I don't think in the middle of North America, the US is not attractive in winter either. So, I mean, I'm not going to pin it on her. I mean, I think she could have maybe taken a picture of you inside. That might have been a little bit better rather than the frigid, icy wasteland that we occupy. It just let's continue. I mean, so far this has all been basic.
Yeah, there's nothing I don't find anything offensive about this.
Except the vicious part, but then again, Karen is sort of
yeah, well, no, but I mean, how else are you supposed to go after?
I actually find her description of the clientele at Coliseum Steak and Pizza to be kind of cunty.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would agree. They leave the old people out of it.
Yeah.
They don't have any taste buds.
There were lots of old people there, but they weren't just like shoveling freaking food into their mouths to avoid conversing with the people across the table with them. Right? Everybody was talking. It was like, I suspect that if you got hold of her recorder that she used, right, there would be a lot of conversation around background conversation that you would be able to detect, because not everybody was just sitting silently shoveling food into their mouths to avoid talking to the people.
But obviously this gives you an impression of her contempt towards what probably is middle America.
I live in north central Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
I live in
but
it's a community of mostly new families and elderly people who are blue collar workers. That is our neighborhood, right? Those are the people who live nearby, near Coliseum Steak and Pizza. And also there is a significant amount of people who use pawn shops and cash loan outlets and things like that, right? Like there's a lot of those businesses in my community. It's like literally I once said, you drive up 118th Avenue and every block there's a pawn shop, a payday loan company.
Yeah, I got you. But
right?
The point is
and a liquor store every single block, right? And yeah, that's fine, right? That's fine to acknowledge that exists, but that doesn't mean these are like people who are, like kind of disgusting and like, like no, everybody in my neighborhood is like super friendly. Like everybody in my neighborhood is like, from the people who work at the Safeway to the people who work at the liquor store to the customers at the liquor store, 99% of the people who live in my neighborhood are great people, right?
Yeah, sure. They're just trying to get by like everybody else. So,
yeah, no, and they maybe don't have a university education. Oh, well, that means that they're like some kind of freaking subhuman thing.
Chuds.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm looking forward to what she's going to say about me.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay. Strawn provides commentary that sheds light on the legal way. I have it running. It's okay.
All right.
Just give me a second. No, I'm just waiting till it reflects it on the thing. Yeah, I don't know why OBS just closed. That is really not good. Okay, I think we're live now.
All right. I still can't see it. Yeah.
So
okay, sorry guys. OBS just decided to quit on us.
We're back. OBS crashed briefly. So
okay, but you still need to share your screen.
Yeah, let me share my screen really quick.
Well, we technically we really don't need to read it because he's reading it for us.
It's fine. Oh my god.
All right. So Strawn provides commentary that sheds light on the legal and social issues men often face, but it's her less PC moments she's known for most. In the past, she suggested that domestic violence is correlated with, quote, foreplay, orgasm, and post-coital bliss, end quote. That marriage has become, quote, too risky, end quote, for men, and over lunch, that women have a responsibility for preventing their own rapes, an assertion recently echoed by Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, Donna Rotuno, to defend his behavior. For this, she's been kicked off of Twitter, called a, quote, domestic abuse and rape apologist, end quote, and accused of misogyny more times than she can count. I've read that paragraph, so go ahead.
Okay. Is that accurate? Let's unpack that.
Let's unpack these allegations one at a time, right? There is something called the cycle of abuse, right? Okay, and this is something that is part of the Duluth model, right? That things get to a crisis point, there's a violent episode, then you go through the honeymoon period, okay? The honeymoon period, oh, I'm sorry, let me buy you a kitten and make it up to you, right? Okay? This is like all part of feminist dogma and me saying, yeah, that actually appears to be the case, that, there's this cyclical nature in domestic violence where you have a woman who is instigating domestic violence, right? And then the man hits her maybe just once, and then they have a honeymoon period where everybody's like, everything's just wonderful, and it's like it is all sunshine and lollipops, and all of that is forgotten, right? All of the conflict and the instigating that led up to the thing that he did, which was hitting her, which and that everything, right? Everything, including the instigation and the hitting, that's all forgotten because now we're in the honeymoon zone, right? And that's mirrored in all, like, there's nothing controversial about saying that because feminists have been saying it since the 1980s.
I think what's controversial is this idea that there are
women
women out
actually
there.
have some kind of role that they play in this. It's
Yeah, well,
not
there
just
are women out there
dragging
who
her
will.
by the hair through this cycle. It like the woman actually contributes to it out of her own volition. Yeah, that's the thing that's controversial. Okay, what's the second allegation there?
You asking me?
Yes.
Okay, so
I didn't read it.
domestic violence correlated with foreplay, and then that marriage has become too risky for men.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Obvious. Okay, next
Okay,
one.
and that women have a responsibility for preventing their own rapes, an assertion recently echoed by Harvey.
Everybody has a responsibility to take some kind of account of their own fucking safety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody has a responsibility to say, hey, I'm in an environment. What's around me? Hey, is there anything that could endanger me? Right? Is there anything that could put my life or my psychological health at peril? Hey, maybe I might want to avoid that. She's literally saying, and cell phone users have a responsibility to stop texting while they cross the street against a red light.
Okay. Let me unpack some of
and
this.
And that's unfair.
Okay.
To cell phone users.
Yes and no. But so the first part is the domestic violence issue. Yes, there are, Aaron Pizzey talked about this. There are women who are addicted to this kind of violence, and they will engage in violence in order to receive violence. This is a thing. It's basically BDSM without a safe word. And if we're not going to be able to help people who have an addiction to violence unless we recognize it.
It's not just BDSM without a safe word. It's BDSM without the consent of the male partner, because he doesn't know he's in a BDSM relationship. She's essentially forcing him into that type of relationship without even telling him that she's doing it. And are we back on the air?
Not yet. Give me a second. All right. It's coming. It should be coming up here in just a second. I just needed to change that option. It just took a little bit. Hold on.
Yeah, so apparently
hopefully
that website is a lie.
Yeah, that's not whatever it was. Whatever. Okay, we're live. Yeah, we're back. Okay.
Okay. So what I was saying is that's not every single case of domestic violence. There's a huge amount of variation in how abusive relationships work, in how domestic violence works. That you essentially have situations where people may become violent with each other, but there's no pattern of abuse, right? There's just like some kind of crisis point where like everybody's stressed out of their minds and somebody pushes somebody or whatever, and it's like that's really not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a cycle of abuse, and we are talking about women who are addicted to that. We're maybe talking about, in some cases, women and men who are addicted to that pattern finding each other and having really horrific outcomes. But we're also talking about men and women who aren't addicted to that getting into relationships with men
who
are, right? And it's not necessarily the man who is consenting to that cycle of behavior. Sometimes it's the woman who's coercing it on the man. Sometimes it's the man who's coercing it on the woman. In both cases, the person who is being coerced should be considered an innocent victim, right? And Aaron Pitsey said this. Aaron Pitsey said some of these people stumble into these relationships. They don't have a history. They don't have any kind of
and they're baffled by what's going
underlying
on.
psychology, and they don't know how to handle it because they have no armor against it, right? And they never were raised in a situation where people were treated that way around them, and they're suddenly being treated this way, right? But like to look at it from this lens of, yeah, well, you know, women are never the abusers in relationships because men can hit harder or whatever. Like, fuck that. Fuck that.
Okay.
Fuck all of that.
I'm going to tell you something. There is a sort of a sickness that I see among with feminism, and it's encouraged among highly feminine women. A lot of them, what I've noticed is that they don't really feel alive unless they're being persecuted. And the reason why is because when you have these negative experience, when somebody does something to you, there is a sense that you are owed. And if you're taught your entire life to never see the consequences of your actions as having any merit or power in the world, then what are you going to do to feel like you're heard and have any kind of influence over the world? You're going to regard this process of being attacked or harmed and then
Acted on.
being acted on and then owed as your method of being in the world. And it's sort of sick and it's sad. And I see this in this reporter, and how she's reporting on this. She's not recognizing legitimacy of our point of view, and she doesn't recognize the legitimacy of our point of view because she doesn't have that quality of instrumentalizing, of seeing her actions as important in the greater world. I mean, maybe she does, and maybe this is just the influence of her editor, I don't know. But the way that she's reporting on what you're talking about, Karen, because you are a masculine woman, obviously, and in many ways you see something that's very important to a masculine woman or a man is to see that their actions matter in the greater world. So it is actually more horrific for us to have our actions downplayed, to be told that we have no effect on whether or not we're raped, that we can't take responsibility for protecting ourselves, that our actions don't matter in the outcomes of our lives. That actually is far more triggering and painful.
It's horrific. It's horrific. Like
for us.
I've often, and I think I said this to her, right? That the people who can't get over a traumatic event are the people who are the equivalent of someone who was struck by lightning on a clear day while sitting on their living room sofa. Those are the people who end up being agoraphobic. They end up locking themselves in their houses, never going out, right? Because there was nothing they could have done to prevent what happened. So there's nothing they could ever do to prevent it from happening again. So, and I literally told her there needs to be some kind of integration of within the individual, within an individual psyche, of the external and the internal, right? Like nobody's arguing that the individual is 100% the captain of his fate. Like there are some people who argue that, right? I am the captain of my fate. Nothing happens to me that I did not make happen, right? There may be, that's unhealthy. That's unhealthy. But you know what else is unhealthy? Nothing that I could ever do to prevent something bad from happening to me, right?
Yeah.
That's all you have. Okay.
This is I just also want to point out this is an extremely long article. It's really long.
Oh man.
So
oh god, this is gonna be this. We might have to do it piecemeal. All right, so is it open again?
Yeah, it's running and it's open. Maybe I'll try not sharing screens. I mean, there's nothing that you have to see, so that might help. I'm not really sure.
Okay, just to sum up what I was saying before.
We're live again too, by the way. So
just to sum up what I was saying before we started, you have to marry the idea that you do have the capacity to act in the world and affect the outcomes, right? That you are subjected to, right? But at the same time, there are things that are random or that happen for no reason. Sometimes because somebody acted badly, sometimes because of just random chance that you couldn't have avoided. You have to be able to integrate those two ideas, right? Because the idea that I'm the captain of my fate and there is nothing that happens to me that I did not make happen is unhealthy, but also the opposite, right? I am just the substrate upon which fate writes its actions. To borrow a phrasing from you, Alison, which was just beautiful phrasing. That's not healthy either. You have to come into some kind of middle way where you can accept that, there are ways that you can reduce your risk of being victimized. You can never eliminate your risk of being victimized, but you can reduce it, right? And those ways aren't necessarily gonna cramp your fucking style, right? Like, how is locking your front door cramping your style? How is that an outrage? How dare I have to lock my front door when I leave my house?
Okay,
Right?
can I just get in here because I'm going to try to explain
Yes.
where I think she's coming from. There's this propensity with feminine individuals to, as I was saying before, to regard being acted upon in negative ways as a source of their being and their way of affecting the world around them. It's extremely unhealthy, but essentially they receive a negative action
It's
and that gives them
gross. It's gross.
I know it is. I know, but it gives them moral authority to have an effective presence. And can you imagine that being in that headspace that you actually have to have these negative actions recognized? You cannot accept any kind of culpability for problems in your own life because the only way you feel like you have a voice is when something happens to you and you're able to use that to say, you owe me recompense.
Okay, and here's an example of that, right? Okay, so I'm on social media and I'm talking about, sexual assault and stuff like that. And what do I do? I preface my comment with, I have been a victim of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing there? Right? What am I doing there? I'm saying I have a right to speak about this because I have been a victim of it. Also, you don't have a right to be mean to me about my opinions because I have been a victim of this.
Yeah.
Right? And it gives me authority by saying, yes, I have been a victim of sexual assault. Right? And that's not really, like, I don't do it because I think that this is what it does for me, or this is like, it's just that it does it for me or whatever. Like, if I say this, then nobody will be able to, and I'll have this moral authority and blah blah blah, right? But it does actually point out the fact that, like, if you are going to be the moral authority on sexual assault, right? If you are going to act like you have all of the authority on the conversation, right? You can't dismiss me because, hey, I'm a victim.
Yeah,
right?
it is, and that is part of it.
And
but
it's like I've done it, right? And I know what I'm doing. It's not an instinctive response. It's just like, yeah, no, I know.
But
Like,
imagine being in the headspace where the only time you have an effective presence in the world is when you're a victim of something, and then you can say, "Everybody
yeah,
owes me."
yeah.
Yeah, that's based on how she responded to what you're saying. Either she's just being really uncharitable, or she actually exists in that headspace, or her editor influenced her.
A shit what people think about her. If they want to believe she hates women and encourages rape, let them. As long as she's calling attention to the myriad ways feminism supposedly endangers us all, it doesn't matter to her how she comes across.
Agreed.
All right. For the uninitiated, the men's rights movement is a loose, unofficial federation that disputes the idea that only men have power and privilege in society. Many men's rights activists, MRAs, believe that men are equally, if not more, oppressed than women, and argue that the rise of modern feminism has created unfair social systems and unjust laws that subjugate all genders in dangerous ways.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
To the
Agreement.
I mean, I don't like the use of more oppressed than women, but
I hate the word oppression, and I told her that.
Yeah, I don't like that word because but otherwise, yeah, I mean, if you take that out of it, it's pretty much fair. To the average MRA, men are burdened as providers, discriminated against in divorce and child custody proceedings, ignored as victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and unfairly villainized as the sole perpetrators of both. Many feel
okay, the only
Yeah.
thing that is wrong about that statement is that to many MRAs, right?
To the average MRA is how she actually words it.
To the
Actually,
average
that's
MRA. No, to like
it's
everybody.
the average person now. Like, honestly.
Everybody. Yeah.
Everybody is almost everybody knows this now.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
isn't
This
really
is
a
the
point
average
of
person.
this is
Well,
not
and
a
which
point
is
of
very
view.
interesting that
It's not a matter of opinion.
Yeah, it
This
just
the thing.
is.
It's not a matter of opinion. It just is.
Yeah, you're right. It just is. And most people are recognizing it. It's interesting how she's sort of isolating these ideas to MRAs. Whereas the real difference between us and the average person, I think, is that we think that something needs to be done. And even that is no longer the case. More and more people are, I mean, just random people I find are saying, yeah, we need to do something about this stuff. So I mean, geez, I don't know. I think that it's sort of it might be a little bit slippery to attribute these ideas to men's rights activists as opposed to just what is now floating.
Or like to attribute it to ideas as opposed to just like this is factual
This is
reality.
factual reality. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. So this is unavoidable factual reality, but okay, let's go with that.
Okay.
Continue.
All right. Many feel that laws that benefit women have displaced them from the labor market and the education system, stripped them of their roles as fathers, and reduced them to nothing more than sperm donors and ATMs.
Okay. Literally, affirmative action and preferential hiring practices have, I mean, in our Discord there are men who can show me articles job postings and scholarship postings that basically say women and minorities only. So how can you, this is not an MRA belief. This is literally what you've championed. This is the society you wanted. You want to discriminate against men until the society no longer discriminates against women. I think that's the logic. And this is what has happened. Just because it has a negative effect on men, it's almost like they want to do this, but they don't want anybody to point out that it's being done and that it has a negative effect on men.
Oh yeah. No, it's seriously like my man applied for a City of Edmonton job, and someone in our sort of one of our Skype conversations, Discord groups, right, has applied for a City of Edmonton job, and it asks, are you a woman? Are you non-binary? Are you Indigenous or Métis? Are you a visible minority? Right, and you're going to get preferential treatment if that's what you are, right? And you're going to be hired based on that. And my man, so I mean, like he's working for a major multinational company, and energy company, and he has to sit through every week. He has to sit through a 2-hour meeting, right? He works as an independent contractor, so he is an incorporated entity, and it takes on all of the liability. It's hire and fire at will. You don't get any benefits. You don't get any sick days. You don't get any holiday pay. You don't get any overtime pay. You don't get any nothing, right? You just get straight pay and no job security, right? And he has to sit through every week a 2-hour meeting where they talk about how they really want to, like, treat their employees, their actual employees, right? And they use the term interchangeably, employees and contractors. They're all employees when it comes to doing the work, right? When it comes to the work they demand, right? But they they use them. They're completely disparate groups, right? The employees, they have all the benefits. They have extended health and dental coverage. They have sick days, paid sick days. They have holiday pay. They have overtime pay, time and a half, or double time holiday pay and overtime pay. They have all of these benefits, right? And then they're saying, and we want to give our even more mental health days every month because we really value our employees' mental health, right? And he's sitting there for 2 hours, right? Hearing about how the I guess the aristocracy in the company, right, who have employee status, they get all these benefits and the company really cares about them. Well, he has none, not a single freaking benefit, not even the benefit of, they don't even have to give him 2 weeks notice, right? They don't even have to have cause to fire him. They can just let him go today, right? At 12:27 p.m. They could just let him go. He doesn't even qualify for unemployment insurance, nothing, right? And they can let him go for no reason at all, right? And at the same time, they can sue him if he screws up, right? They can't do that with any of their employees because they have employee status, and therefore the employees are working under the rubric of the company where he's just an independent contractor. So if he screws up and somebody gets killed or it costs the company $1 million because there some valve freaking closed when it should have opened, right? Okay, he's liable for that, right? And he can be sued for that by the company. And and he's sitting there listening to them just freaking lick the buttholes of their employees at the same time that the executives in the company are saying, when they were at a town hall, full company town hall meeting, right? They were asked, well, okay, so you have record profits this year. Does this mean you're going to hire on some of the contractors? And they say, well, we've been actively recruiting. This is a Canadian company, actively recruiting at Black universities in the United States. And we're always interested in hiring Indigenous people and women.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you are a white or Asian man, you're fucked. You're never getting hired. You will always be that person.
Second-class citizen. Who's responsible for the company's record profits, but will never actually be recognized as a full employee.
With all of the benefits that you get to hear about every fucking week. Right?
I know.
And
people wonder why young men are checking out, because here's the unbelievably egregious part of all of this. Despite the fact that women and minorities are openly biased for when it comes to scholarships, assistance, favored when it comes to scholarships, assistance, and getting jobs, the average man still has a family that thinks he's a failure if he doesn't achieve 2 standard deviations above women. So nowhere are young men getting any sense, and they're in this Kafka trap.
Yeah.
And they just completely check out, and you can understand why. In fact, it's going to become, as this acts on society, as these pressures act on society, I predict that the vast majority of young men will simply just refuse. They won't do it consciously. They will just, they'll be in their parents' house or their mom's house.
It's just not
worth. It's not even not worth it. It's impossible. It is impossible in this scenario, in a scenario where our society is actively discriminating against young men and actively discriminating for young women. It is impossible for a young man to succeed 2 standard deviations above the average woman. And they will recognize this unconsciously, if not consciously. And we are going to be looking at generations upon generations. If you're an older couple and you have a son, or if your son is in elementary school, or you're a young couple with a son, it's most likely that your son will never leave your house. You will be supporting him for the rest of your life. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's super great. It's super awesome, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how does no one see this? how does no one see this, right? You've set men to a higher standard in terms of, you know, what they have to earn in order to have any kind of reasonable life, right? You set them to a higher standard than women, and then you freaking hamstring, right?
I know.
And you give, and you essentially just like shovel resources into the greedy whore mouths who are going to outcompete those men and then complain that there's nobody worthy of freaking fucking.
Yes, it's astounding to me, and it's horrifying because we're already seeing the economic effect of demotivating young men. The fact is there's no upward mobility between
35%. 30 this I heard this on CBC.
So it's
CBC
probably like 65%.
So I'm like, yeah, no, totally going to, they're saying it, right? Then it has to have been fact checked, right? 35% of working age men under 25 in Canada are not in education, employment, or training.
And that's got to be a low bound. That's probably the ones that are still actively looking for work. This is not good, guys. This is seriously not good. A culture, a society that does not engage its sons in the work of production, of creating itself, of creating its future, is not going to survive.
Well, and here's the thing, right? Right? Because, you know, we have this, yeah, we want to engage men in the work of like, yeah, so if they accidentally sire a child with some freaking one night stand, right? We're going to force them to fucking work and force them to pay. No, you can't motivate people by enslaving them. Like, what the fuck is wrong? People.
I know.
Actually give them something positive to work towards, not something terrifying to run away from.
And you see all of these families, and they see this. They see their sons withering. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, you looked at, like, Alec Manassian, the guy looked like he was 50, and he was, what, 25? That was astounding to me, and I know that's a bit of an aside, but their sons are withering. They're becoming nothing, and they're watching their sons slowly die. Like, you got these 20-year-old guys who have absolutely no prospects. You know, maybe some of them are looking into Belgium for euthanasia. That's the one disturbing conversation that I've had.
Oh my fucking God. Jesus.
I mean, this is their future. This is the future of your sons. Why not? You know, like maybe you could, instead of saving up for college for your sons, you could save up for a trip to Belgium so they can be euthanized.
Oh, this is the catch-22, right? You know, if you succeed, if you don't succeed, you're a loser, right? And you don't deserve to live. And like society can just cut you loose because, hey, you're a man and being a man isn't worth anything unless you succeed, right? Okay. But if you do succeed, you've taken that success out of the hands of a more deserving woman, right? This, and so you're a monster and you're an asshole, right? So like this is what young men are hearing, right? And then they're hearing, and this is the thing too, they're hearing that it's the system that does this, right? And the system that does this, it's a system, right? Which means that, you know, you were born with original sin because you were born wrong, okay? But there's nothing you can do, right, to not benefit at the expense of the marginalized, right? Because it's systemic. It's systemic. So you can't just opt out. You can't opt out of your male privilege or your white privilege, right? You can't opt out. You can't say, well, you know, I'm just not going to take it, right? You can't be like Trump and say, well, you know, I'm donate my salary, my presidential salary to charity, right? You can't say that. You can't do that. There's nothing you can do. You're the beneficiary. Other people are harmed by it. And there's nothing you can do as an individual to opt out of the system that makes this happen. And so all you can do is feel irredeemably guilty about how you benefit from this, right? Even if you don't, whatever, right? But even if you believe that you do, right? Even if you believe that you are privileged as a man, as a white person, as a whatever, right? As a heterosexual, whatever, even if you believe that you're benefiting from the system, there's no way for you to gain any kind of absolution. This is like original sin, except worse than Catholicism. Because there's no way, there's no amount of Hail Marys, right, that you can recite. There's no number of hours you can wear a hair shirt during the day to absolve you and redeem you from this original sin. No, it's just an is that you need to feel bad about, right? And I'm like looking at it and I'm like, what? This is literally what we want men and white people and heterosexuals and cisgender people to believe about themselves. This is like the right, you know? You are a criminal and there's no redemption, right? Like literally somebody could be on death row and they could be like, you know, I found Jesus and they could get forgiveness before they fucking get executed, but not you, because you were born wrong.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, this entire narrative is used to justify stripping all of the privileges, or so-called privileges, which are basically just equal treatment under the law from men. And then they wonder why we're like, yeah, we're challenging this narrative, because it's being used to strip away men's rights and to justify not giving them scholarships, to justify not giving them jobs, to justify continuing to treat them as second-class citizens and not employ them in the case of Karen's husband, to treat them as basically serf labor. You know, and this is the narrative that's used to justify it all, this oppression narrative. So of course we're going to challenge it because we recognize the mechanic here. You are using this narrative to justify not allowing men equal treatment under the law.
There are Asian men, minority men, working for the company that my husband works for, right? Okay.
And they can't get employee status.
They've been working there for 8 years, right? They cannot get employee status, right? But, you know, there's a Sikh woman who's been there for 1 year and 4 months. And hey, welcome aboard.
Yeah. So I mean, it's astounding to me. So they have this narrative that justifies not treating men equally under the law. And yes, we are smart enough to realize that is what you're doing. That you can't create these systems of inequality without a narrative of oppression to bolster them. And to be honest,
and there's no escaping. There's no escaping the narrative of oppression. There's no escaping the guilt. There's no escaping the original sin, right? There's no Hail Mary that you can freaking recite, you know, in your heart of hearts, right? There's no amount of self-flagellation you can do. There's no amount of hair shirt wearing you can do.
Yes.
To absolve yourself of it.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do to ever absolve yourself of this guilt. Because it's a slave narrative. It's intended to enslave people's minds. And I just want to point out that I wonder if this is what happened during the fall of the Bronze Age. People just got so sick of their institutions and what they were saying and so alienated. Because that's what I'm seeing. People are just sick of this crap. They're sick of it. And everybody just ended up walking away. They're just like, you know what? Screw you, Bronze Age supercultures. Screw you, palace economy. We're just going to go off into the hills and create a fort town and be subsistence farmers for a while until we invent the alphabet. And
yeah, we're gonna build a village out of popsicle sticks because
yeah, fuck you. Yeah. All right, let's keep going, Brian.
Okay, so moving on. How much longer do you guys want to go before?
Oh God,
it's a long.
Yeah, we
article.
Can't go for too long because Brian has his own show.
Oh, really?
Valentine's Day after all.
Oh my fucking God! It's Valentine's Day. No flowers for me. I feel oppressed.
Okay, so let's try 20 more minutes, and then if we need to, we'll make this like a multi-part series. We can probably milk this for a while. So,
we can also do the other articles too, eh?
I just want to say I love my husband, and I don't care if he buys me flowers.
I didn't get flowers either, but
no. Like, he still has a chance to buy me flowers on his way home from work, but I don't think he will, and I don't care because I love him. And him I love, not the flowers. So
yeah. Okay, Brian, go for it.
Well, so I'm giving up my Valentine's, by the way, to spend time with you guys, the audience. Because I think, now, but I'm talking about for my show later, the Badger Lodge, Brian's Badger Lodge. I'll be talking to the men on Valentine's Day, and I didn't want to move it because I think it's actually important, but I'm not going to dwell on that because we're doing this. So I'll see you guys at 6 o'clock Eastern for the Badger Lodge. Okay, but anyway, I was reading this thing. Okay, they're concerned about the disproportionately high rates of workplace death, murder, suicide, and homelessness for men. Angry that infant boys are subject to forced circumcision while girls are not. And on the whole, collectively furious that in a post-Me Too era, false rape accusations against men seem to be rising with little consequence to the women who make them.
Okay, that's...
Lindsay just got back from walking her dog. That's why JoJo's barking in the background. It's very reasonable. The only thing I just want to add this briefly, and I know that you guys are doing most of the talking here, but it's hard to say whether or not false rape accusations against men are rising or if we are simply exposing them. And they appear to be rising because we didn't consider this to be a possibility before. So...
Get into it. Read more.
We may be detecting false allegations at a higher rate than we were.
Yes, but they may be occurring at the same rate. So, I mean, like Emmett Till, anybody? All right, so tour any men's rights subreddit, blog, or website. Paul Elam's A Voice for Men is the most notorious, and you'll see that most MRAs feel expendable, like their needs, experiences, and opinions are no longer valid, and like they're in on a secret the rest of the world refuses to acknowledge. That men are the victims in a biased society that's always favored the rights and interests of women over theirs.
Why does it always have to be framed as...
I think I know why. And I'll just say it briefly before Alison or you guys rant about it. I think the reason is because people like the author of this article, and I'm trying to be really charitable here. They see the differences. They see everything in terms of who has power and who does not. And the people who don't have power are victims that are oppressed. So if you point out, and this is the way that they view the world, right? There is the oppressors and the oppressed, the haves and the have-nots. And if you point out that things are more nuanced than that there are ways in which the people that, or the groups that are being cast as oppressors have themselves their own problems, even if you don't describe it as oppression or victimhood, but rather, this is life, everybody has it shit, right? But you basically bring up how the oppressors actually have their own struggles and their own issues, and that it's not as simple as oppressor oppress. Then because they can't wrap their minds around that, they just reverse their own view of the power differentiation, and they say, oh, so you think men are the ones that are oppressed and women are the ones that run everything. But that's just projection.
Because they're arguing over that. You remember what I said, that when something negative happens,
over the victim turf, right?
They're arguing over the victim turf.
You're saying men are the real victims, the true victims, the victims, the only victims, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, men are not the victims. Men can be victims. That's what we're saying. Men can be victims, right? We're not saying men are the victims, the true victims, or the real victims, or the sole victims. No, we're just saying men can be victims. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And we're not even saying it in a way that, like, oh, let's claim the victim, the center of
And the
the
moral
victim
high
chessboard.
ground.
Let's
Yeah.
claim we're doing it as in let's attend to these issues. These are concerns that we need to attend to. Men's issues are actually society's issues, considering how instrumental men are to the functioning of society. So we need to attend to these issues for the simple fact that if we don't, we are going to lose our comfortable life. If you don't even care about men, why don't you care about that? It's not even about like who wins the political victim off. It's just these are issues that need to be attended to. We don't need to talk about victim offs and who has moral authority here or whatever. Just get the nail out of your head, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's not
Mm-hmm.
about the nail, honey.
It's
It's not
not
about
about
the nail. All my sweaters are snagged, but it's not about the nail.
yeah, it's about yeah, I know. It's like and I can see that this is once again a competition between two ways of viewing the world. Viewing the
Mm-hmm.
world in terms of being acted upon and getting moral authority from being a victim, and that being your way that you see yourself in the world. That's why they seem to regard this as empowerment.
Yeah.
And people saying, "Well, this is a problem, let's fix it." It's not
Yeah.
about who's to blame. It's not about who gets moral authority from the problem. It's about fixing the damn problem. Do you
Yeah.
understand that?
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not
Yeah.
yeah.
we're not after your moral authority for being a victim. We're after fixing the bloody problem.
Well,
And yes,
I would
we
argue that we are after their moral authority, because anybody who derives moral authority out of some kind of, a narrative of victimhood, that's actually a problem, right? Okay,
well,
so
yeah, if it's not genuine, if it's not real, if it's not a real problem that needs to be fixed, if you're just deriving authority from
okay, but
making things up.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Chimpanzees have an understanding of morality, right? They have an understanding of who is a real victim, who is not, right? And they like literally they have done observational studies, ethological studies where, like some subordinate chimpanzee just walks up to the dominant male, pees in his face, flings poo at him, throws rocks at his head, gets his ass beat. Okay. Scenario 2, some subordinate chimpanzee just happens by minding, and the dominant male takes his day out on him, right? And what does the group of chimpanzees do, right? They give the guy in scenario 2 a lot of consolation, a lot of like, hey, that was pretty shitty, right? What you went through. We want to make you feel okay, right? In scenario 1, they're like, "Are you still alive? Okay, right?" And
But
so
here's
even chimpanzees are able
yeah.
to recognize the genuine victim, right? But we somehow are not.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that we're dealing with a group of people who only feel alive. They only feel like a person when they have something negative to say, you owe me for this. Like, and I'm not saying that's some sort of evil thing that they've done. I actually see it as something that's done to them. Like it's like the story of the flannel squirrel,
Mm-hmm.
the velvet squirrel, the velveteen squirrel who believed that he wasn't alive unless he was being torn to pieces. It's like this is like a horrific place to be in my mind. And and I see this. It's like, no, we're not arguing, we're not trying to take away your right to be, although you might want to diversify here, my dear. Maybe diversify to some other ways of being, like
I think it was called a velveteen rabbit.
the Velveteen Rabbit or whatever. The Velveteen Rabbit. And you might want to diversify and up some other ways of seeing yourself in the world besides this negative thing happened to me, therefore I have the authority to command recompense, because that's a really limited way of viewing yourself. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is a conflict between two very different worldviews, and I've realized that it doesn't matter how much information you give them, they can't see it until they get out of that headspace where they only exist if they're being acted upon in a negative way, that in such a way that gives them moral authority over another human being. And it's like, can you it is a real conundrum. But let's continue, Brian, because I know that you want to get going for this.
All right. Let's see. So, let's make sure where I left off. All right, yeah. But not all MRAs believe that men are oppressed victims. What? No, in general, we don't. Oh, I see what they're doing. They're basically making Karen the exception, not the rule. Some, like Strawn and Tiemann, simply don't buy the idea that one gender is oppressed more than the other. That's their fundamental beef with feminism, actually. While most people see it as an empowering ideology responsible for imbuing women with equal rights and social agency, it's not. MRAs interpret it as a flawed dogma that insists that women are the powerless, eternal subjugates of men. We refuse to acknowledge when women fuck up, but can barely wait to point the finger at men. As such...
Okay. Yeah. I don't have any problem with that. At least as a description of Alison and me, I don't know whether that's an accurate description of many or most MRAs.
Yeah. No, I don't think it is.
Yeah, disagreeing with us. No, I think most MRAs avoid words like oppression.
Yeah, I mean, if the only other thing that she cites are the men's rights subreddit, which anybody could be posting anything in there, and A Voice for Men, which I'm fairly certain that Paul doesn't toe that line of male oppression. Probably the one prominent MRA that I can think of that comes closest to doing that, but doesn't do it anyway, would be someone like Warren Farrell, because he's usually talking about boys. And boys can for legitimately be victims because they're children. But even then, I don't think he plays that oppression game. I think that one of the reasons why... I just want to make two comments. One, I think one of the reasons, going back to what I was saying before, another reason why they try to do this flip of, it's men that, MRAs think men are the ones that are oppressed, is not only because of what I already said before, which is they see everything in terms of who is oppressed and who is not. On the other side, there is this terrifying fear that if people, that if you explain that there is no such thing as this kind of oppressor-oppressed dichotomy, then their entire ideology collapses, because it's built on that central pillar, right? It cannot stand if people don't see that, so it won't work. And so I think that this is why they respond that way. And to the other thing I want to say, which I think is kind of related, was where she says, while most people see it as an empowering ideology responsible for imbuing women with equal rights and social agency. I'm sure that most people do see it that way, but it doesn't make any sense if you think about it, because every single thing that women got that feminists would take credit for, they only got because men gave it to them. And so if men didn't want women to have anything and they ran everything, if patriarchy exists in the way that they believe, there is no way that women would have the vote. They wouldn't be able to buy property. They wouldn't be able to drive cars. They wouldn't be able to work jobs because men wouldn't let them. And if men
actually, even more damning, they would be the majority of the violent deaths around the world.
They would probably be forced to do the riskiest jobs. They'd probably be the ones that would, like you said, they would probably be the majority of the homeless. They would probably be the ones that we would be demonizing and advertising. I mean, there is no way that could even ever exist. And in fact, if that was also true, our entire society would collapse because we wouldn't be able to sustain it. So this is why it doesn't make any sense. But women would not have any of the freedoms that they have if men didn't give it to them. That's it. Go ahead.
And I mean, I guess what they're trying to say is that feminism consolidating all of this feminine energy and agitating for women did something. But the honest, not only did men give women what they wanted, they gave women a better situation than men
had. Yes. They did it.
And they did it as soon as they could.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
well, as soon as women started to ask, because when everybody had it shit, before the Industrial Revolution, and everyone was working like 15-hour days, they weren't pining for that then. It wasn't until we became more or less industrialized and life was becoming more comfortable and we had more free time and all that. Yeah.
The cash economy too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, let's go to the
All
next
right, so
part.
anyway, continuing on. As such, Strawn is very good at pointing that finger of blame back in the female direction. A feminist direction is what it should say. If feminists put down nice guys who are angry about being friend-zoned, she'll argue that they are merely afraid to admit that they prefer men who, quote, don't necessarily respect them 24/7. End quote. If people pick on men for late life bachelorhood and their growing resistance to marriage, she'll say, of course they're still single. Women's standards have become impossibly high. If any mortal among us dares to suggest that men might have more power and privilege than women, like when it comes to earning 18% more in every occupation, there's reliable earnings data in.
Oh my!
And spending a quarter less. Spending a quarter less. There's. You cannot talk about the wage gaps in isolation from the spending gap.
Yeah, I actually brought this up with her. If she doesn't bring it up, then...
Well, yeah, I'm not done with the rest of the sentence. Okay, so yeah, wage gap, obligatory wage. See, now when you guys are doing drinking games, but when I say words like accountability and responsibility, you should be doing it for things like my wage gap, my rape culture, my 1 in 5, my patriarchy. Then you'll really get blasted. But anyway, like when it comes to earning 18% more in every occupation, there's reliable earnings data in. She'll opine how, when a ship is sinking or a building is burning, it's women and children first, never men. That's all she said about it. So
I no, that's a Bill freaking opinion. That's not my opinion.
What is?
It's really interesting. Okay.
That men earn more because in the unlikely
event, that's the Bill Burr joke. Yeah.
Or if Titanic, that somehow the women get to go with the children.
Sure.
And the men get to. Yeah, no, that's I've never actually said remotely like that.
Men would do it. Men would do it even if there was no wage gap. Even if women were making more money, men would still probably call for women and children first. So, moreover, when she says something that either absolves men of blame or paints them as the victims of a bias, she melts the heart of her fan base, who react to her with awe and adoration. Quote, to be important to society, a woman merely has to be, end quote. She says in her much cited video, quote, Feminism and the Disposable Male, end quote, which has been viewed 1.6 million times. Quote, a man has to do in order for his life to have any meaning to anyone but himself, end quote. I am stunned, one of the YouTube subscribers commented in 2018. This is my first time in my 34 years that I have ever heard a woman speak as if I am not just a resource.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep going when.
All right,
when
I'm going to keep going. If I say, her videos kept me grounded, sort of, says a fan of hers on a Reddit thread I posted about women in the men's rights movement. I put my plans of suicide on hold and eventually gave up on them altogether. Strawn is articulate and dedicated, so it would be unfair to attribute her popularity, influence, and apparent suicide deterrency solely to her gender. It's not any woman who could do what she does, after all. But at the same time, she might not have gotten this far in the movement without it. Quote, when men complain about the issues they face, it's construed as hate speech, end quote, she says, dunking her French fries in ketchup and then gravy. Quote, if you complain about the erosion of due process rights in a sexual assault and domestic violence case, you get accused of wanting to make rape and domestic violence legal. On the other hand, women aren't only allowed, but expected to complain. They have the privilege of being the trusted voice on gender issues, she explains. So when they speak up, people listen. A Redditor sums it up as follows. Karen Strawn is a core reason why internet MRAism took off. The fact that she's a woman only helps out the movement.
Okay, I don't have any problems with that other than, like, why did she need to include the fact that I dunk my French fries in ketchup and then gravy?
It's so very American, so very Canadian.
Karen. Yeah.
I think that's what she's doing. She's trying to say, look at how Canadian this woman is.
Look at how Canadian. Like rube she is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's Canadian. Yeah. It's just a Canadian thing. Keep going, Brian.
I know.
To the casual observer, it might seem crazy that the human emblem of men's rights would be a woman, and yet another example of men creating problems and expecting women to solve them. But to those familiar with the movement, no, she's describing what the casual observer might say. That's
not really what the casual observer might say.
No, that's what she
thinks.
She thinks, yeah, it's what she thinks the casual observer might say.
Seriously, she's just spent how much time deriding people who like French fries and steak. How many people do you think that describes in North America? I would say probably 60-70% of them. So I'm sorry, Isabel. I don't think your thoughts reflect the thoughts of the average person.
Isabel bought the veggie loaf. Oh. The veggie loaf is a vegetarian submarine sandwich, oven baked, right? That's what she had. I had a steak sandwich with French fries. I ate half of it and took the other half.
Okay. To comment about women voting, feminists would respond to it by saying men didn't give women the right to vote. Women had to fight for it. Along with men started wars about women in the military.
Feminists would say men didn't give them the right to vote. Yeah, I would love you to enumerate the signatures, just like the signatures on the ratification of the 19th Amendment, right? Enumerate the signatures, right? Run down who voted to ratify that amendment and do a gender breakdown of that.
Yeah. And also, the thing is that not only did men give women the right to vote, once again, they gave them a better position than they had ever given any group of men.
Yeah, they gave it to them for nothing.
Black men had to fight in wars before they were considered for the vote. Poor men had to fight in wars before they were considered for the vote. Women did not actually have to fight. If they had had to fight, they would have had to fight in wars before they were considered for the vote. And it wouldn't matter that they didn't have the right to vote for those wars because lots of men didn't either.
Yeah. And also, how many women died in their suffragetting?
I think one, because she ran at a racehorse. But okay, Brian.
One.
Plow forward. I want to actually get to the point.
Default settings were. So, are you guys still there? It's running now.
Yeah, we're here. We're here.
Still here.
All right.
Just keep going.
All right. So anyway, as I was saying, I don't think we're gonna finish this today. I can promise you that. So right. But to those familiar with the movement, a female mascot makes perfect sense. According
mascot?
Yeah.
I'm a fucking mascot? You can fucking lick my sweaty butt crack, Isabel.
Oh boy. Okay, keep going, Brian.
According to Elam, an admittedly belligerent MRA who Bloomberg recently named the movement's unofficial leader, women have supported men's rights since day one, and a growing number of anti-feminists like Strawn and Tiemann continue to do so today. Both he and Strawn estimate about 10% of their base is female. That's not actually surprising. There have always been small groups of women who have campaigned against feminist causes like women's suffrage, the Equal Rights Amendment, and reproductive rights. Actually, wasn't it the majority of women that were against suffrage?
Yeah, the majority of women were against suffrage.
Yes, it was the majority. Fuck.
Yeah. And reproductive rights. Also for reproductive rights, it's a majority of women.
In contrast, the thing is that they campaigned against suffrage in many cases because they didn't want the obligations to the state that men had. And they also campaigned against other rights for the same reason. The pro-life people campaign against women having a right that men do not have, which is to separate consent to sex, or just ejaculation to parenthood. So it's disingenuous to conflate these groups of women. But continue, Brian.
All right. But when I ask MRAs why women might buy into a movement that seems to conveniently ignore historical and contemporary instances of female oppression, Tiemann tells me...
You can fucking fuck right off.
Tiemann tells me... It's okay. Tiemann tells me that she doesn't agree that, quote, men oppress women anywhere, anytime, in any culture. I get a surprisingly kumbaya answer. Men's rights is about equality. At least it started out that way. In the 1970s, the men's liberation movement sprung up amongst men and women interested in rewriting traditional gender roles and challenging assumptions about...
Belfort Bax never existed. Yeah, no, that was Belfort Bax.
Mm-hmm.
He
never
existed, right? The Vienna Association of Men's Rights never existed, right? You know, like that. Yeah, none of that ever existed. Right. And women's rights throughout all of history, the feminist movement, despite being essentially a declaration of war on the male sex, like that's just been like, it was entirely benign and wonderful. And men never, ever objected to it until the 1970s. Fuck. Oh my!
I'm surprised she didn't. I'm surprised she isn't describing the circumstance where she interviewed me, because it was actually
this is
a
really
low-key but still upscale dining area of a hotel.
Yeah.
So
well,
she's sort of omitting those details, which is interesting. But you know what? I'm actually really glad that she quoted me verbatim about that oppression issue, because I want to put that into people's mind as a thorn. Yes, there is somebody on this planet who categorically does not believe in the oppression narrative.
Well,
because it was never proven, just decided.
Alison,
somebody's. But I'm glad she put it in wholesale, because that is going to be a thorn in people's minds. Just let it work its way in there, because that space is going to get bigger and bigger. And that space is the space that is probably going to save everything around us. But, I'm just glad it got in there in this particular instance. Payload delivered. Okay, continue, Brian.
All right. Well, I mean, you're probably in here at length, because like I said, this is a very long article. So, and I saw a photo of you and Jonathan in here, and also Hannah. But anyway, as I was saying, so at least it started off that way. In the 1970s, the men's liberations movement sprung up amongst men and women interested in rewriting traditional gender roles and challenging assumptions about who and what men could be. A contemporary of feminism, the two ideologies coexisted in peaceful harmony for years, each working towards what feminist Andrea Dworkin referred to in her 1983 book, Right Wing Women, as, quote, one standard of dignity, indivisible by sex, end quote. According to GQ, Elam would later call Dworkin a 300-plus pound basilisk of man-hate who just wanted to be raped. As you might say the men's liberation movement.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't argue with that characterization of Andrea Dworkin.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
You know what? And I'm going to be really blunt. I see this toxicity, I'm going to call it toxicity, among feminine individuals. I won't call it toxic femininity, I'll call it toxicity. That they don't feel like they exist unless they're acted upon negatively. And I have heard feminists talk about being raped as being some kind of seminal event, some kind of coming of age. They haven't actually been raped, but they're waiting for it, wishing for it, wanting it. Because to be acted upon so powerfully will give them so much authority in the feminist culture, and it's sick.
Yeah, no, it's like when who was it, the chick with who wrote the book with the Barry Republican freaking rape narrative in it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Lena Dunham.
Lena Dunham. Okay.
And she tweeted out, I have never had an abortion, but I wish I had.
Okay, Brian, just let's keep going.
All right. As time went on, though, feminism and men's rights began to diverge. The more educated, employed, and financially independent women became, the greater influence they started to have in politics and the media, the easier it was for the men's rights camp to argue that feminism had achieved its goals and the fight for women's equality was no longer needed. They began to see the strides women were making as an overreach of the equality they'd already created, and they doubled down on their defense of patriarchal gender roles as a defense.
What? The men's rights movement. Okay.
I think she's still talking about the 80s. So
just keep going.
But she literally said.
Let me finish the paragraph at least. Let me finish the paragraph.
Let's let her finish the paragraph.
Okay. By the 1990s, the movement had taken on a notably contrarian stance that aligned more with past movements like the Federation for Men's Rights, which formed in Vienna in 1926 to, quote, combat all excesses of women's emancipation, end quote. That's the end of the paragraph. I can keep going.
Unless you think it's impossible for women's emancipation to have excesses, then I don't see a problem with that. And if you think the movement can never go too far,
okay, women can never go too far. So, like, hey, men's emancipation, right, is essentially Rebecca Sullivan's freaking characterization of the Red Pill movie, right? Oh, well, you know, men want to be emancipated. They want to have, as long as if we could just have sex with whoever and whatever we want to, whenever we want to, then maybe we wouldn't have to rape you. That's emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
That's full emancipation. Like, let's just, everything goes. Anything goes. Like, let's just free everybody to do whatever the they want, right? Male, female, whatever, right? And nobody can complain about it because, emancipation's a good thing.
Anything can go too far. If you think that just saying that it can go too far is some sort of extremism, then I invite you to consider, Isabel, that you are an extremist.
She finally brought up, the 1927 Vienna Men's Rights Federation, right? It was essentially saying, there are problems. Right? Well, we already knew there were problems. We knew there were problems because in the 1920s, it was impossible to convict a woman who had murdered a man if they were romantically involved, right? Because the all-male juries would acquit her just on the face of it, right? We have a musical and a movie based on that, right? He had it coming. That was a historical period in our lives. Like, let's just, like he his chewing gum, right? Or he complained about his bad day, or he whatever, right? And I killed him. And in Chicago, this was actually a thing. In Chicago, it was next to impossible to convict a woman of killing a man, right? We had the heart bomb racket, we had the Badger game, we had the all kinds of schemes, right? We had women who were collecting child support from like 8 different men in different jurisdictions, same fucking child, right? Because they were essentially blackmailing them. This is your baby. You can't prove it isn't. And if you don't want me to like go to the press and tell you that you have an illegitimate child, you're just gonna pay me, right? Like you literally had all of these things. You had a situation where a woman who supported her family, including her husband, by her own means, had a viable suit against his estate for compensation, financial compensation, because she shouldn't even have to be supporting herself, right? When he is barred from accessing any of her income and property. You literally had a situation where all of these laws were every single privilege, every single right, every single anything advantage that the man had was being systematically, legally stripped from him, and every single privilege and every single entitlement was still being upheld in the women. Right? This was at the turn of the last century. And oh my goodness, there was a group in Vienna who were like, of men who were like, hey, things might be getting out of hand here. You actually had situations where a woman would go to court, right? Divorce her husband, go to court and get alimony. And then she would go into some other jurisdiction and she would get married to another man and she would go to court and she would divorce him and she would get alimony. And then she'd go to another jurisdiction and go divorce him and marry another man, go to court, divorce him, collect alimony, and she'd be collecting alimony from multiple men in multiple, no way of keeping track, right? And she'd be just like living the high life off of 3 men's freaking income, or 4 or 5 or 8 or however many, right? Because the law said, hey, if you get married and you get divorced, you're entitled to alimony, right? And there was no communication between these jurisdictions saying, hey, wait a minute, she's collecting alimony from more than one man, right? And you literally had women being able to take advantage of these things. You had one guy in Canada who tried to sue his ex-fiancée under breach of promise laws. And Google it, the heart balm racket. Google the heart balm racket, right? This was a case where women here's what they would do. It was a scam, okay? Here's what they would do. They would meet a guy, they would go through the courtship, he would ask her to marry him and announce it publicly that they were engaged, and then she would essentially change personalities overnight, treat him like shit, abuse him, and he would break off the engagement. Then she would go to court, she would sue him for monetary compensation for breaking her heart.
All right. All of these things represent excesses, legal excesses.
Yeah. And then she would do it over again and over again and over again. Right?
And these all represent legal excesses that the men's issues and men's rights groups at the time had every legitimate reason to address.
Can you let me finish my point, Alison? There was one man in Canada who sued his wealthier female fiancée for breach of promise, and he was told, yeah, I'm dismissing the case because it's just not a thing that men expect a financial gain from marriage. That's women. Women expect to gain financially from marriage. Men have no expectation of financial gain from marriage. There's no legal expectation of financial gain from marriage, so you have no grounds to sue.
Okay. Therefore, there could be excesses even in the 1920s, even in the 1890s, even in the 1700s. There could have been excesses in the law favoring women, and there were. And you would know this if any of them even bothered to actually look at the law without a feminist lens, without the lens that men oppressed women throughout all of human history. And the further back you go, the worse it gets. Okay, Brian, go.
All right. So, in 1993, Warren Farrell, a one-time feminist who many consider to be the father of men's rights, published a book called The Myth of Male Power, in which he argued that the perception of men as powerful and privileged was false, and that it was them, not women, who were the real oppressed gender. We've heard this before. Yes, stop. This idea was pure inspiration to men like Elam, who, along with a new generation of MRAs, began to aim their spears not at gender roles, but at the beast of feminism, without which they insisted, and continue to insist, that everything would be better. This, of course, is in spite of the fact that many of the inequities men face are enforced by other men, not feminists. To name a few, The draft, which many MRAs cite as the ultimate gender asymmetry, was conceived of and enacted by male politicians. The Violence Against Women Act, which does a notably poor job of protecting men.
Wait. What also conceived of and enacted by male politicians was the exclusion of women from the draft. And the reason for doing that had nothing to do with inability. It had everything to do with the fact that women shouldn't be imposed upon, and they didn't want to see women die. The end. So
yeah. And the Violence Against Women. Yeah, that
also
was
done by
mostly male politicians.
Mostly male politicians.
Yeah, but
who want women.
But who agitated for that?
Oh my fucking! What?
But how is this possible?
They're just proving their central premise.
Yeah, that feminism was responsible for getting women in the draft. So which is it, Isabel? Is feminism responsible for all of the benefits that women have gotten, or are men? She's flip-flopping here. When it is men who are enacting positive things for women, suddenly it's feminism that needs to be that gets the attribution. But when we're saying that men, or when we talk about issues that negatively affect men, like not having the vote without the draft, which is something that male politicians created and feminists take responsibility for, she's suddenly saying, oh, it was men who did it.
Yeah, okay, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to say that society has always been a patriarchy in which men privilege themselves at the expense of women, how can you then turn around and say, but it was men who insisted that men be drafted and not women? Oh, it was men who insisted that women be protected from domestic violence, but not men. Right? Oh, it was men who did all of these things. Men in power, the patriarchy that exists to privilege men at the expense of women has gone out of its way to provide privileges and exemptions and entitlements and extra rights to women, right? But this patriarchy oppresses women and privileges men.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's what I'm saying. In this one particular instance, she's citing the fact that it was male legislators that put the male-only draft in place. Well, first of all, they didn't put the male-only draft in place until feminism got, allegedly, actually it was a suffragist, but feminism allegedly got the vote without the draft for women. That's when the draft became men only. But she's saying that feminism was responsible for this, but now men are responsible for this. I'm saying this is one act. The act of feminists getting women the vote without the draft, according to her, it was feminists who did it, not men, was also the same act that men's rights activists are saying this is wrong because it's against men. And now she's saying, well, it's men who did it. But she just said it was feminists who did it. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. She just said it was feminists that got women the draft or the vote.
Yeah.
And of course, they got women the vote without the draft. And now she's saying, well, it's male legislators' fault that men have the vote and the draft.
Yeah.
Well, which is it?
No,
it's also saying those male legislators wanted to oppress women and privilege men. And those male patriarchy freaking subscribers, the patriarchists, right, who oppress women to the benefit of men.
I know that.
Right, and they gave women that, and they continue to not give men the same, an equal.
Yeah, I know. The basic premise is wrong. The basic, but
also
this is
worldview is incoherent.
But for everybody who's listening, she's looking at one single thing and she's seeing it two different ways.
Yeah, I understand.
Depending on which is most convenient in the same article, which is most convenient to her narrative.
Like basically you guys should understand. It's basically if the government did something that is good for women, then feminists did it. If the government does something that's bad for men, men did it. And that's basically the short version.
Even if it's the same thing.
Even if it's the same thing, yes. So it just comes down to who benefits. And then we get to decide who is responsible based on who benefits. All right. The Violence Against Women Act, which does a notably poor job at protecting men, was authored by Joe Biden and his male colleague Orrin Hatch. Meanwhile, traditional gender roles that prohibit male emotion and encourage violence were created by men and are often encouraged man to man. Yes, Joe Biden is a feminist, and also the gender roles are not created by men. That's stupid.
No, they're not. They're not. No. They're not.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Categorically, that is not true.
Isabel, why are you saying that women have had no role in dictating social norms? Why are you saying that they've just been like, they're just like the female population is like one big freaking flat pancake that has had no effect on anything ever, despite the fact that every single boy and girl was raised at the breast of a woman, right? Do you not think that women have had some influence on social roles and gender norms? Like what
Again, it is it's like a clash between different ways of viewing the world. Like she sees the world only in terms of how she's acted upon and how she can use that negative effect to create authority, to create a sense of being owed. And she's literally, when you look at what I pointed out, how she sees one act in two different ways. She attributes it to patriarchy when it's harmful to men, and to feminists when it's good for women. The same act she attributes to two different things. And the reason why is because she cannot be forced. She absolutely cannot be forced to take responsibility for anything negative that happens to men because she's a woman. That would be, I guess, her death, the destruction of herself. Something horrible would happen, whereas I would say something amazing happens when you start to take responsibility for something other than yourself. You grow.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you experience true empowerment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So that was the end of that paragraph, and it's 229. So how much further do you want me to go? Because I have to set up my stream that's like in 2 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the Badger live streams channel, Brian's Badger Lodge. Very important to do the outreach.
Well, yeah, we're going to be talking to men about essentially coping with loneliness. I know that it's Valentine's Day, and I know that this seems weird and cheesy, but I believe that even though it's like a Hallmark holiday and most people say, oh, this day isn't very important, once it sets in and you start seeing, if you're alone this Valentine's and that, I'm going to try and help you guys, with that. And we can talk about ways for men to cope. And like the long version of this is to basically like learn to live with yourself and to, cope with when you're down, whether you call it depression, sadness, just feeling low, loneliness, isolation, etc. That's what I want to talk about on today's show. So I'm giving up my Valentine's to spend it with you guys. And I hope that you guys call in and let's hang out. So that's
all right. Sounds like you got to get to that, and of course this is a very long article.
It is.
I might actually read it before next time.
It's really long. Basically, he goes into, or the author, she goes into where the MRM is today. She talks about some of the articles, and she talks about Janet Bloomfield for a while, and then the SPLC. Because, they added us to their list of hate movements or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, whatever.
And so, it's a long...
Why did she even go out and interview us? Like, what the hell was the point of that?
If you think that it should have been for the truth, then, this is journalism today. They're not about that.
Also, yes, I did record the interview.
It's about the narrative. It's about the narrative.
I will be making the interview public, so you guys can listen to my interview with this individual and make your own decision.
I didn't record it because I'm so sick of having to do that. But my interview, but it was 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't even know why she bothers. Like,
Like,
seriously,
3 hours
Karen,
face to face. Yeah.
Karen, yeah. Why? I don't understand this. Why were they spending so much time if they're just not even going to try to extend a whisker of thought to understand where we're coming from?
They don't care.
Like,
Or they
one
can't.
whisker. I mean, seriously, you think that you're challenging gender roles, and you're just basically, what is the right word for it? You are solidifying. Karen, work on this word for me. Solidifying gender roles.
Reinforcing.
Codifying. You're codifying them. You're codifying them. You're essentially saying that women exist in the category of acted upon, and you do that because you only feel like you have anything of worth to say when you're a victim. That's a horrible place to be. Why would you want that? I mean, it's time to move forward, people. It's time to embrace something new. The old is done. It's over. Women actually have action, can take actions and do things that matter. And there's something a hell of a lot better just over the horizon if we do, as women, embrace the fact that we affect men. We have an effect on men. That doesn't erase our being. It is the very first step into becoming something more. Okay? Like, embrace a greater self, not a lesser self. And this is why I don't get this. She comes to Saskatoon. She spends so much time. She comes and she sits down for 3 hours and gets nothing out of it except her own preconceptions. What was the point? Like, why would you even waste your life doing that? I guess a paycheck. Well, yeah.
Yeah, paycheck, and then the crippling fear of, well, I mean, what does a woman like her do if she comes to the realization that she actually this entire time had complete control over her future, and she chose to be a victim for all of it.
I disagree. I disagree. Nobody has complete control over their future.
Well, not complete control,
but you have to.
Oh God, what a horrible sound. Okay, let's end it because Karen, Karen.
You have to be able to integrate the fact that you do have some control over your life.
Yeah.
Do we have any
super chats?
Yeah, I do. I want to read them and then we'll go. So yes. We'll try to maybe we'll do more of this article and to continue. I know where we left off. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, let us know if you want us to keep going. But right now, yeah, I do have to go. So super chats. I'll start with the the early ones and then go on. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us 10 euros and says obligatory super chat to validate Honey Badger Radio's basic YouTube rights. Quote, this is what corporatism looks like. Hee hee ho ho, corporatism has got to go. They read that one out loud, but I just read it again. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says Asian men don't have problems being hired culturally. We talked about that already, and that doesn't mean they can't be discriminated against, but thank you anyway. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us 5 euros and says, okay, everyone, we're packing. Kelvington, Saskatchewan, here we come. I hope you Canadian bigots accept political refugees. Tyler Preston gives us $10 and says, to comment about women voting, feminists would respond to it by saying men didn't give women the right to vote, women had to fight for it, along with men started wars and barred women in the military. Yeah, that's the Joe Rogan one, right? We have all the rights. We got them all. Bullshit. Great Indoors 1979 gives us 5 euros and says, obligatory awe to Karen and Alison on Valentine's Day, who are only doing this for the male attention. Heart emoji. No love for Brian, of course. Black heart emoji. Well, thank you for the super chats. Okay, so do you guys have any final words before I wrap this up?
Support Honey Badger Radio. HoneyBadger.com.
Also, I just want to clarify because of the super chat that you read out. Asian men really depends. Really depends on the field. Because in technology, in software development, in all of those fields, Asian men are way overrepresented. They're like 30 to 40% of the employees, and therefore they get nothing. They get no, like, they are not considered minorities, right? Google 27% of their employees are Asian men. Something like that. And so Asian men get nothing. Asian men get no boost. They actually are treated like white men.
Amazing.
Astounding.
Oh, that's horrible. Let's just end it. Seriously.
Okay.
I just can't stand this echo.
All right, so we're gonna go. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Apologize for the technical problems. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications and leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about this. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for coming on the stream, and we'll see you next time.